Welcome to the Release Your Blocks podcast. I am your host, Victoria Bond. I am a spiritual empowerment coach. I help teach others to show up to their potency so they can fulfill their mission here on earth. I am so glad you are here. And if you are interested in becoming a medium, if you're interested in becoming a life coach, or if you're interested in shifting your life from the 3D to live more in the 5D reality, then check me out, book a clarity call, and let's get chatting. Hey everybody, and welcome. This is my friend and mentor, my HD mentor, Siobhan, and today we're going to go into HD. Welcome, Siobhan. Thank you for being here.
Hilarious that we both wore hats.
I know. And we were actually just having a mentoring session before, and we weren't wearing hats, and then we went away and we came back. So
we're on the same wavelength, apparently.
Yeah. So human design. So it's so interesting. And the reason why I had to have this conversation with you and bring you into my audience really is because I was on a random page about 2 years ago now, and someone said something about HD or human design. I'm like, what the heck is that? And you actually said, hey, I'll send you through your chart. And I was like, whatever that does that even mean? You sent it through to me, which I was like, wow, thank you so much. That is super generous. I know that this is what you do for people as well, as you pop it into your little chart, send them through this blueprint of their human design. And then I was like, I don't even know what that is, but okay, that's amazing. It felt very aligned. And then I forgot about it for a year until it was mentioned again. And it wasn't until I learned that I was a projector and all these different things that all of a sudden it was like this whisper or this splenic hit I now know saying, that lady Siobhan, she told you about this a year ago. And I'm like, what? And then I reconnected with you, and then of course, introduce you to my community. You've done many, many readings for some of my clients, and that sounds contradictory, but I needed somebody I could trust with human design. And now it's come all around to this loop 2 years later where I'm like, splenically, I got this hit of I require Siobhan to break this down for me, to understand me, to help me understand others. So you've actually become like a bit of my HD mentor, if you will.
Yeah, which I'm very flattered to be. I had the same experience with human design. You know, I first heard about it and I saw the chart and I thought, okay, whatever that is, it looks way too complicated and bizarre for me. And I kind of lost interest, but human design is very funny, isn't it? It kind of continues to find us. And that's what kept happening for me. It kept coming back and showing up. And you know, it was really interesting. I'm a highly sensitive person in HSP, and I was in a group for that. And I had been hearing about human design for a while. And this young woman in there said, you know what? I finally got my human design reading. And like, I'm done. I'm kicking back. I'm living my life. I'm not worried about any of this other garbage and trying to figure it out. And the anxiety of everything, you know, in today's life. And she meant it. Like I could tell everything about her had shifted. And there was something about, that was the time. There was something about the way she presented that. And I went, oh my gosh. And I knew, I was like, okay, it's time. So I started to follow up on it. Long story short, I ended up going through all these trainings for it. And Karen Curry Parker is my mentor, which Karen has a whole philosophy of human design, which I adore. And I'm grateful because that's the one that resonated for me when I finally said, okay, I'm ready. So it was kind of like Karen came into my life and it was like, that's why I wasn't ready yet. I needed the correct mentor for me. And the rest is history. So it's been an amazing, amazing ride. And I 100% understand that young woman in the highly sensitive group who said, you know what? And it like just changed her life. And I thought, wow, I totally understand that now. because it really does. When you let it kind of marinate for a while, and you know, if you feel the same way that you and I did, and you're like, what is this crazy stuff, and it doesn't resonate right away, then definitely step away. But I think it's really interesting how it does tend to like just keep coming back. It's like this little voice, you know. Yeah, and then eventually you'll go, all right, I want to look into this further.
And I mean, for me, you know, I'm a projector, 3/5 splenic authority, and I have hit burnout, and I'm a high achiever, and I've felt a lot of pressure my entire life. And even coming down to my schedule, which is what you and I were talking about today, I don't function just like any normal person who can just, when I had a 9-to-5 job as a hairdresser, I was a hairdresser for 20 years. I loved it. I love working. I'm good at it too. But then I couldn't do anything else but work. So people would be like, oh, Victoria, you're a nana. Why can't you keep up? So I had to consume a lot of alcohol and a lot of smoking back in the day to stay, and coffee and stimulants to stay awake. And this, what was it? The HSP, highly sensitive people. I would probably categorize myself in that. And the more I've aligned to me and who I truly am, and HD has definitely helped me, I started aligning to that before HD. Now, HD is just the toolkit, but of course, when we're aligning to who we be, we naturally do that, which is what you love to teach about, and which you're helping me with as well. But the thing is, I'm a psychic medium. And of course, as a psychic medium and as a person who's highly sensitive and intuitive, of course, I'm going to try and keep up, and then I'm going to be conditioned and programmed to fit in like the energy types that do love to work and have the energy to do so. But I could tell there was something off, and I was looking at myself and I was going, why can't I, what is so wrong with me? My bloods are normal. I don't have low iron, but how come I'm passing out for days on end and getting so sick and depression and emotional? And then I realized when, like, thank goodness that you kind of dropped that seed and emailed me, even though I didn't know what it was, it's come all the way back around. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, if I align to my design, what does that mean? And if I can really get down on who I am and what is right for me, how could that look for my whole entire family unit? And in fact, the minute I chose to start it to align to my design, which is only about a year and a half ago, to be honest, I have now built a new house, built a multiple 6-figure business. My husband works for me. Our parenting looks different. Our life looks different. So it fascinates me. So I'm curious about you, Siobhan. What did you do before HD? I was a hairdresser. So what did you do before you became a coach and into HD?
I actually was in substance abuse. I was a mental health counselor. I was not technically a mental health counselor, a substance abuse counselor, and then supervisor. And I did that for about 15 years. So I worked in the mental health field as a counselor. And, you know, especially in that particular field, you learn a lot. It's not an easy field to work in. And so you learn a ton about human behavior. This is one of the reasons when I started to learn about human design, I was like, oh, what? Like, I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, because it actually takes all of the stuff that I had learned in behavioral medicine, and it's in the chart. All of it is in the chart. And so much of what I dealt with was loss of the self, was denial of the true feelings, was what we call in human design conditioning, where people were like living in the energy of other people's voices, right? They were living with ghosts, if you will, and they didn't even know it. And so often it would be so ingrained that this behavioral pattern that they had, they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't see it. It was a huge blind spot. And so the challenge for me was helping them gently to see that and see, wow, you know, this is where you really need to heal. It's not about the other person in your life. It's not about this. It's not about that. It's about what's happened in you, this wounding. And lo and behold, when I learned about human design, I saw the wounding, the classic different areas of wounding in the centers of the chart. And I was like, okay, that's pretty amazing. And I saw then how the energy was processed and how we become conditioned in certain centers. And more I started to see all these patterns. And that's like the tip of the iceberg with human design. So I became really fascinated because there's an actual blueprint to kind of healing these things. And this is why that young woman in that group that I was talking about was like, okay, I've got this. I know what to do now, kind of thing. And I am so done being codependent or whatever you want to call it, but she was able to see it with such clarity once she got a reading. So pretty fascinating. So I left that field because of burnout, because of the dysfunction, because it was a super unhealthy career to have at this point. And, just so many problems in the field. And I love the people that I've worked with in the past, but, and I feel for them. I had to get out and I thought, why can't I take that stuff and translate all those skills that I've learned for years and years and bring it online into coaching? That's a little hard, easier said than done, I should say, until I started getting into human design. And it gave me very specific language and tools to kind of do that in a whole different way. So it's very beautiful. It's the story of evolution. It's the story of you. It's the story of me. It's about where we've been, why we've been there, where we are now, and where we're going and how to get there. And I've never done a reading where somebody has gone, oh, that's nothing like me. They always go, what? How did you know all that? Like sometimes people cry. It resonates so deeply for them.
I know I cried.
So,
I went to bed that night, and because I didn't understand what the concept of a projector was, and then I did a program with another coach, and all she said was, go and find out what your energy type is. That's all she said. And I had kind of forgotten that I had that drop in because it didn't make sense to me. I'm a busy mom, got a business, all the things were happening. And then when I read about what a projector was, I burst out crying. I went to bed and I went, I'm not as fucked up as I think I am.
Especially projectors. They have the toughest time in general in life. And because they're so misunderstood. And they try so hard to fit into a society that is not meant for them at all. It's not that it's not meant for them. It's just that we haven't caught up to allowing them to be who they are. And so projectors in particular, when they find out, they often have a complete meltdown and they're like, thank God somebody recognizes I'm not meant to, be the way all these other people are and work the way other people do and all these things. So it's pretty interesting.
But then, of course, you have to go through the grieving process, right? So the grieving process was I actually came into bitterness, and if you guys know about HD, you'll know that that's the not self theme. And I was upset, and then I went into overwhelm that how the hell am I supposed to live and put money like food on the plate when I'm only meant to work a few hours a day? And I know that's quite a big thing for projectors. But then I realized, okay, this is why they call it the experiment, right? I was like, and I'm going through a new experiment at the moment, so I want to go deeper. So I'm like, hang on, what if I can be a multiple six-figure, like yearly coach and have baths and go for a walk? Like, after this interview, I'm going to be with my husband and I'm switching off for 3 days. And I guarantee you I'll make money by doing that. It doesn't make any sense, But of course, it also helped me understand myself deeply and my children and my husband, because as a projector, a wounded projector, I was walking around going, if you just did this and this and this and this and this and this, that's what you need. Oh my God, how do you treat your husband like that? Why do you do that? Well, all you need to do is this and that. And like, seriously, that is, when you're functioning that way, it can come across as very much like you're a bit of an asshole, an egotistic, or you're a know-it-all and all those different things. So you learn to either shut your mouth or it's like the balance of being a projector is so hard because there's blueprint. If we were all born with a blueprint and said, hey, here's a couple of tips about you, sweetheart, then we're not going to try and fit into this box. So that's what I love about it. And now I don't try to make my husband be me or my children be me. I can adapt to what they require and my clients.
Yes. Yeah, it gives you so much insight. And, that's exactly what happens in human design. We call it the not self, where we're living in our conditioned centers. And so when you get a chart, it's kind of the shape of the upper part of a body inside of a triangle. It's looks a little crazy. And then there's all these shapes inside of it. And it actually corresponds to all these different ancient techniques that we've used for a very long time, like astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life. What else? Quantum
Astrology.
Physics is where, what's that?
Astrology
and quantum physics. So, quantum physics comes in and it's kind of like, oh, wow, what's this? It's kind of this big up level of combining all these things. And so without getting into too much detail about that, when you look at these, you get this very cool mandala. Like I can print out a mandala for people if they really want that. That's got all the different symbols of everything on it that we just mentioned. But when you look at this and you see 9 shapes inside, it's very bizarre, right? And yet some people, the first time they see it, they actually tear up because something resonates very deeply. These 9 centers are either colored in or not colored in, without getting too specific for this talk. And the ones that are not colored in, and this all has to do with your birth and all that kind of thing, your birth date. And the ones that are not colored in are where we become the not self. It's where we take on all the voices from our past, all the filters from everything we've been through, right? From where we were born, who we grew up with, all the things. We just naturally have all these filters. And what happens is we lose who we are. Think about the state of the world right now, right? There's so much confusion and so much anger and bitterness and the whole thing. It's pretty easy to see that we're either on the brink of destruction or up level, right? Something is happening here and something needs to happen. And human design comes along and teaches us, and we received it in 1987, but it teaches us that these centers, these open centers where we've been living from this, what human design refers to as pre-human, right? All this dogma, all these rules, like everybody's supposed to be like this and think this way and do this and all these things, keep people in so much pain and so much burnout, right? Trying desperately to do the right thing and knowing deep in their soul it's not right for them. And so that's where the conditioning is, right? When we're living what's not right for us, so much so that we often completely lose touch with what is right for us. And again, as a counselor, I used to deal with that all the time when people would come to me, same thing, right? And so now they start looking at these centers, or if I do a reading, I look at them and I see right off the bat all the areas that they're really struggling. And, people are just blown away. They're like, okay, how did you know that?
I know as soon as I had my HD reading, I think I've had like about 3, and the first 2 I probably didn't really get. I was like, whoa, it was more like a, wow, that's interesting, because I'm a psychic medium. So I can read people's energy, and that there is a lot harder than reading an HD chart when you know what you're looking at, because you've actually got a system. You have to learn that, not really learn the system, more attune to it. But it's like, holy moly, when you're like, Victoria, you're going to feel pressure to prove, a people pleaser, the voices of other people's heads. I bet you have a lot of amazing ideas, but you're not staying grounded. I'm like, well, not that you said it those ways, just hypothetically speaking, they are some of my things. I was like, whoa. And even coming back to that, even though I've been learning this for, for a year now, and you've been doing this for a lot longer than that, it's kind of interesting that we keep coming back to those centers and coming back and coming back and coming back. And like you said, it's not about all of the little tiny things that about it, because there's layers and layers and layers of human design. None of that crap matters if you're not looking at the distinctive, it's like if you've got a problem in your marriage, a distinctive big problem, but you try to do all of the other little things around it and hoping it's going to clean up the big problem. You got to look at the big problem, the big pattern, as you would say. And this is what makes you such a good coach. And this is why I love working with you, is because you see patterns. You've done all of this coaching previously, and you apply that. It is just next level. I find it absolutely fascinating with these centers and how they're open, and how everyone's got different ones, right? So sorry, carry on. I said that. I just totally resonate.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks for the compliment there. But that's one of the reasons I think I did resonate with HD, was because with my experience, I could see, human design is ancient and modern, and it's full of wisdom, and it's full of the collective unconscious and all of that. And so the archetypes are just so universal, right? The struggles, the archetypes, the different energies that people carry. And so everybody's chart is different. And when we're talking about the centers and what type you are, and there's only 4, some people say 5 types, it sounds like, well, how can you possibly get that much out of those things? Well, that is the tip of the iceberg, because it goes far deeper, right? There are many, many, many layers, without boring everybody with the details here. And so it becomes highly individualized. But we have to start with, where am I stuck? Where am I right now? What does my journey look like? Where do I want to go? And that's what human design really sheds a light on big time, and it gives you that whole path to get there. So it's pretty interesting.
And I think those centers are, they can, a lot of people come in and they learn HD and they just go, oh, they're the centers, and then they jump out of that and go into all the other kind of, you call them the variables. But the thing is, unless you get that energy type down and understand how you are actually meant to work in this world, and actually as a psychic medium and energy worker, I know I learned years ago, before human design, that I take on everybody else. I'm telepathic. I can see energy. I can feel like I'm claircognizant, clairvoyant. I'm all of these different abilities. I have all these different abilities. And then when you looked at my chart, you said, wow, you're very 5D. And I was like, how do you know that? How do you know that? I've had so many coaches and I loved all my coaches, but you just said it without even talking to me. You're 5D, Victoria. How did you know that? And that's because you knew what you were looking at. But that means nothing if I don't honor my energy type.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I'm glad you said that, because it's super easy in human design to get lost in the forest for the trees, right? To lose the forest for the trees kind of thing. And the thing is that there are many, 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 many details, but there's an art form to reading a chart, right? To being able to actually see the story in it, to actually see the energy of the chart. And so it requires knowing a lot of stuff about the chart, But there are a lot of details that, and listen, there's a lot of very formulaic readers out there who are brilliant. I don't do it that way. I love the art form of reading a chart. I love the kind of musical kind of tone to a chart as I read it. And people gain so much more from it. Like they're like, holy cow, thank you. You just nailed it for me. So yeah, when I looked at your chart, it was like, wow, right off the bat, projector, sensing, all these different things. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but there were a lot of open centers, et cetera. And I was like, okay, this person, is here to be wise about many, many, many things. And they've got one foot in another dimension easily, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool when you can see that and you can share that with somebody immediately. But I find that you do have to be careful when you look at a chart. It's so easy to go, especially if you're new to human design. Oh my gosh, look at all those things, and get really, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And it's super important that if you get a reading, you get one from someone who really kind of understands the magic of your chart. The formulaic stuff is fine if you're into that.
Yeah, but you said something to me earlier. I asked you a question about one of the little intricacies and you said, you can just Google that. And I was like, that is a really good point. You can Google anything to do with anything. But at the end of the day, we are in this world, and this is what I bring through with my membership and my mastermind and all my programs. It's about the integration. It's about the shifting. It's about the unprogramming, the unsexy work. It's about, like you say, seeing the patterns, seeing the archetypes, and actually choosing to change that and shift that. And if you are like a person who loves to consume information, that is great, but that information is not going to change you. It's the actions that you take. You can read 1 million books on self-help and still not have helped yourself. If you don't take the action, if you don't, like I know for you, because I'm always into bettering myself. So I'll say to you as my mentor, hey, like I need to work on this schedule of mine, soul-centered schedule, but I see that I'm undisciplined and I'm finding it hard to be disciplined, but I'm so focused. So why am I like these two people? And you'll be like, well, let's have a look at the patterns, because open centers, like you said, there is deep, like I said, pressure and other people's voices, which makes sense of why I seem to be all these different people in my life and feel the pressure and the roles that I've been put in on this human experience of the eldest of 5, get the Catholic girl, they get married to your first boyfriend. I did that, funnily enough. Who I think I'm meant to be according to what my parents projected and what they wanted from me. They're generators, my parents. So I'm a totally different kettle of fish. So it's kind of interesting when we get to deprogram and acknowledge that our parents did the best they could. Now we need to take responsibility for ourselves. That's kind of like, I feel where people are waking up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. The very first thing, and one of the things I really love about human design as well is it's very complex, but the simplicity is amazing. And the very first thing, which most people resist right off the bat, is learn what your strategy is, learn about your type, and learn what we call in human design your strategy and your authority, and commit yourself to 6 weeks of jumping into the experiment so that you can actually try this and start to play with this and see what happens for you, right? Because it always really resonates for people once they do that. Now, people will resist it because they want to get in to all the sexy stuff, right? As you're saying, that, they want to get into all the, oh my God, that's so cool. And what about this? And what about that? And it's fine, but you can lose yourself.
They want to be in the 5D before they've gone through the 4D. And the 4D is releasing those. I love how you talk about resistance. I can like, honestly, every week I can hear you talk about resistance over and over and over again. I find it fascinating because People don't want to do the work. They just want the, they just want the medal. So it is very much about like going through what I say the 4D is the shadows and the resistance and what is coming up, and what, rather than going, more will give me more. No, it won't. You have to nearly go back to go forward or whatever. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. And just for those who are still like, what are you talking about, a little bit. Now there is, like Siobhan said, there's 4 or 5, depending on what kind of studies that you're doing, of the energy type. So there's manifest, generator, and generator. So that can be put together as just, under the umbrella of generator. There's projector, reflector, and manifester. So they're what we call the 5 energy types. And then, like Siobhan said, there's strategy and authority. So the way you're kind of meant to, I suppose, live your life essentially, and listen to your intuition. And there's got some amazing pointers. And like you said, if you know what your energy type is, and you listen to that strategy and the authority, which is what you can see in your chart, and you can get a reader to show you that, like someone like Siobhan, then the truth is, like, if you focus just on that for 6 weeks, then you were saying to me earlier on, all the other things, all of the stuff we were like, oh my God, it's going to take me 10 years to learn this, just lands.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the point. And so I try to gently let people know, I know it's very interesting, and, feel free to Google things. And if you really want to get into the super formulaic stuff, just please remember that people are not formulas. And Karen says that all the time. People are not formulas. And so that's where, and initially when I heard about human design, I was like, that just sounds too almost rigid. And I've seen some pretty rigid mindsets with it out there. And again, no disrespect to them, more power to them. That's not my take on it. And here's the thing about human design that Ra told us. Ra Uru Hu is the man who downloaded this. I'll talk about that briefly in a minute. He let us know human design is not mine. It doesn't belong to somebody with that school or even Jovian Archives, which is where you can Google Jovian Archives and learn all about Ra. And, that's kind of the foundational spot for all of us where it all started. And, but Ra says human design is all of ours, right? And it is meant to kind of, we use the word mutate in human design, and change, and we are all change agents. And so human design, as you take it in, and here's the magic that I love about it, and that I back away from the formulaic stuff, because if you approach this the right way, if you approach it with this open mind and with this kind of let me just allow, right, and navigate my world through this energy that I'm learning about here, then you're going to find that human design becomes very personal for you. And you're also going to understand deeply that that is not the way Victoria needs to do it, or other than the strategy and authority. In other words, Victoria is going to have a very deep understanding of human design from Victoria's genius. And we all have a genius in human design. And so it's meant to be that way. This is why human design is a story of evolution. We evolve as a people when we're all allowed to evolve individually without trying to fit in. And that's the beauty. And so that's the thing that I would caution people on is, when you hear about human design, and please explore, everybody, do all the things, whatever you're called to, but just be careful of this. Anybody who's like so rigid, do you know what I mean? That it doesn't feel like the magic can kind of just happen for you, because you're going to bring a whole different, I don't want to say human design, but you will have a different resonance, a different energy with human design. So it's pretty fascinating. And so we've got lots of beautiful readers out there who are different. And
I mean, it's literally HP's exploded. It's like freaking exploded. I don't know about you guys, but it's everywhere, like all over my feeds. It's all HD. And I think what you're saying is so good. It's because the thing is, I was looking for somebody who could help me to understand it for me, and not a way that I can make money out of it, but more of a way that I can integrate it, because I didn't pass school. I didn't even know how to use a computer. Like, I'm slow in some ways and so fast in others. I'm slow in the 3D, but this stuff needs to be integrated. And the other thing that really resonates when you always say you've got a beautiful the beginners, sorry, what is your what's your Facebook group called?
Beginners Human Design.
Beginners Human Design. So when the Beginners Human Design, which by the way is not really about beginners, there's so much in there, just saying, but the thing about it is, it's like you always say, you'll get it, keep going. And at first I was like, I don't know, will I?
I know.
And then you're like, trust me. And every week you're like, Victoria, trust me, you're going to get it. And then all of a sudden I'm doing a reading because I do a lot of human design in my business. I integrate it in, just like I do with mediumship. Like it's who I am now, right? And it's like, oh my God. And all of a sudden I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And I go, hey, well, your G center is undefined. So this, this is maybe while you're kind of feeling like you're not really yourself. Who are you truly being? And I use the energetics in there and the tools, just like you do with the trauma counseling. I bring in my genius tools and transform it right then. And that's how we get it. We use it as a tool, not the be all and end all, because we're not literally robots. We're
not. And that, Victoria, is the key. That's the problem. That's where conditioning comes from. This idea that we are supposed to be in some ways robotic, right? We're supposed to fit these molds. That is the very problem. So I find it interesting when people get into human design and they kind of go that route, and it's like kind of missing the point. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the only thing I would say. We all are growing and maturing. Human design is growing and maturing. It started in 1987 when this gentleman named Alan Krakauer, I think is his name, was living in Ibiza, Spain. I don't even know how you say it. Long story short, and there was a supernova in January of 1987, and he was for 8 days downloaded this information. A voice spoke to him. And he filled, oh gosh, it was like, I think it's like at over 800 pages. Somebody I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong, of material over eight days. It's just a massive, intricate system once you start getting into it, which again is, you can easily go down a rabbit hole with this. And, this is how it was brought to us. And he was told by this voice, it's time for humanity to up level. It's time. And we're actually bringing this to you for the children, so that the children are no longer raised in this conditioning, and they're raised to be who they are, right? Are they kind of the Buddha on the hill? You know what I mean? Then let them be, right? Stop trying to make them, the generator mathematician or something like that, if that's what you think is right for them. And so the more people learn about human design, this is why I believe it's really getting very popular and starting to take off with the internet, because people can find it now. The more people learn about this, like I always say, it's like a spiritual hand fasting, where we gently fall into the soft place of our design, and the world then can just become a much more beautiful place, where we respect each other for who we actually are. We start to lose things like judgment, right? Because it has no place any longer in society. Now people are doing what they're meant to do. And guess what? Everything functions far better, right? Because people aren't burning out. People aren't, suicidal because they're doing something they hate year after year after year. So, Rob brought us this huge gift, but I find it interesting that whatever the voice said, this is for the children, stop.
It's so funny that you say that. I'm getting that was a light being, like that, just energetically, I'd say it's a light being. And then The interesting thing is that really kind of goes whoa for me is my big why, my why that gets me out of bed every day. I've said this on a few of my podcasts, is that it's for the children. And it's not necessarily for my little mini Gen children, who, by the way, never slept and weren't meant to be stuck into a routine. And I, as a projector, I knew that that's actually what made me go insane and go through depression, because I'm beating myself up. I couldn't fit them into a routine and they would never sleep. But basically, what gets me out of bed every single morning is the children of the world. And when I see parents controlling their children and putting them into boxes, and I say, they say, I'm having a hard time with my kids. And I go, send me a photo of, here's the HD link, go send me a photo. And I'm like, your kid is a manifester and you're trying to make them function in a way, because you're a generator, all you're doing is crushing the child. What about listening to what the child needs? And they're like, oh my God, click, 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 click. And it just blows my mind. Another one of my daughter's best friend, she was getting really angry. So they're like 7 years old. They're now 8, but 7 years old. And she's like smashing the doors in the house. Her mum's a projector. Like, I reached out to her and said, hey, have you done your HD? Obviously our daughter's a best friend. So me and this girl just keep coming together all the time. Certain things I've kind of been there. And long story short, she's a projector. Her daughter's a manifester. And I was like, you are such an incredible parent. She has taken her kid out of school. So her kid is at school a couple of times a week, because she's that, whatever you call it, the sensitive person. Her audio, everything is so heightened for her. It's so hard. And she's smashing down doors. She's not what you would perceive as autistic or anything like that. She's just this little girl. She's my daughter's best friend. But her mum was so curious, and why is this behavior happening? And she got so curious in it, she realized that she doesn't fit exactly into the school system. So she's going to make it work in the way she wants to make it work. So when you're saying that we're starting to open our consciousness into how everyone else is different, we are collectively putting this energy together of, we no longer can have these structures that we've had. So as a collective consciousness, we're shaking it all up, and it's going through that crumble. So like you said, it's going to be, or it's going to be like, so it's like, we have to go through this process because we've called it on ourselves nearly.
Right. Yeah. We're on the brink. I mean, and look at it, is part of evolution, is the struggle of figuring out what works and what we should keep and what doesn't and what we need to get rid of. That's part of evolution. And that's part of everyone's chart, is to go through those different things. Right. So it's fun to look at people's history, et cetera. And the chart will tell us a lot of times, well, always, it has some of your history in it, which is really fascinating for people. But it's incredibly important. The way they describe it, or the way Ra described it, is, we're all basically puzzle pieces of this big puzzle of humanity. And we all have the place that we fit. And a lot of people will hear that and say, so what am I supposed to be? Rifle maker in North Carolina? Like, you're telling me I have to be this particular thing? And it's like, no, right? This is part of understanding how to do readings, is that this person's actual history is woven into, right? But whatever the chart says will deeply resonate for them. And they will, unbeknownst to them, they're already doing it, right? It's just that if they're in conditioning, they're fighting it and they're miserable.
And that's what you need to get, isn't it? People need to understand it's not getting the HD or the astrology or the Reiki or the consciousness or the life coaching or the another certificate, another fucking certificate. It's not about that. It's about saying, let's go inward and see who I am. And I always say in my coaching, you have to look after the kingdom of the kingdom of me. So then you can look after the kingdom of we. I made a decision when I had to choose to live or die, because I was suffocating and drowning and burnt out. And I know many of the listeners are here as well, or have been. part of our blueprint. Obviously, we've been through that, the conditioning. The thing is, I had to choose to look after myself so deeply to heal myself.
Yes.
And it seemed on the external selfish. And I even had a few people say to me, what about your kids? I never left my kids or anything like that. I had to put them into daycare so I could sleep in between my work or whatever, right? So I did everything for my children, but to do it for my children, I had to come back into myself. And that's why I put myself out there so boldly and share my experiences, because for the children of the world, but it doesn't seem like I'm doing it for the children, but I am, because I'm talking to the parents.
Right, right. Whether people know it or not, we're all part of the story of evolution, right? You don't have to be aware of it. We just simply are. And all human design does is show us this is how you are in particular, you know, and this is, and I like to describe it like this, you kind of are plunked into this vehicle, right? So when we are born into this incarnation, this is like the play that we're in. We're in this big play, right? And our type is the role. And so, you know, maybe you're going to be the wait staff somewhere, something like that in this movie, right? I don't know, whatever. That might be your role, right? Maybe you're the lead, whatever. But I also like to say, and you're dropping into a vehicle, and maybe it's a Prius, and maybe it's a Ferrari, right? A lot of people are trying to be what they're not because they're so wounded. They're so wounded that they really just don't know any other way. And it's killing them, right? So you find out your type, and you are in this play, and your type is this role that you're playing. And then we have something called a profile, which involves two numbers. I'm not going to get into all that because it starts to get like, whoa, this is too much already. But the profile is part of it. And the profile is the character of your role. So are you funny and outgoing? Are you quiet and you know, turning inward a lot? And there's a lot of other things involved in that, right? Are you somebody who experiments to learn? All these things give you the information about this character. Now, I'm not going to tell you, well, you're doing it wrong. You need to be that character. You're going to say to me without fail, that's me. That's what happens. So people often would be like, well, what are you going to tell me how to be? And I'm like, I don't have to. You're already being who you are. The problem is you're shaming yourself about it. You're fighting it. You're all these different things, right? The wounding, the stories you're telling yourself, the filters that you're dealing with. So then we've got, now we've got the play, which is the time, the era that we entered, right? And all the crazy up leveling that's going on right now. We're on the brink, right? The tearing down, the rebuilding the foundation. And then, so here I am, I come in as let's say the Ferrari or something like that. And, you know, maybe I'm bright red, or maybe I'm very kind of a blended kind of, you know, into the background color. And then what we call our incarnation cross is the plot, my particular plot line in my story. So it gets really, really fun and interesting. Nobody's reading is going to tell you you're meant to suffer. You may interpret what's happening in your life that way. Like we talk about Saturn and Jupiter and all that, right? The whole chart just tells you this is how you navigate with great ease. This is how you allow the things to fall into place and stop fighting it. Stop paddling upstream, as Abraham Hicks says, right? So that's what's so cool.
Can I just add in a little thing there as well? Like, so I am my energy type is a projector. I'm splenic authority, which means that's the way my intuition works. And I'm what we call a 3-5, which is the two numbers, like Siobhan said, with the personality profile. Now, my sister, who is, I don't know, like 8 years younger than me, she is a projector. She is a splenic. But the thing is, yeah, we're quite similar in a lot of ways. Definitely I see myself in her, and the higher kind of vibration and the lower vibration, we mirror each other. But she's a 2-4, so she's a completely different personality profile. So therefore, where I am like bold and I am like kind of crashing into the wall to find the door and stuff like that, she's more of this kind of like a hermit guru energy, right? So she's more like, she loves to be alone and she loves to sit there and people come to her, where I'm kind of like, here I am, a mystic, that's it. So it's kind of interesting. So this is what makes us so unique. And then we've got different gates and different channels and all the different things about that. This is where you can go deeper into it. But there's a few things that are the same, that are the most important things. And that is, as a projector, this is the way you are meant to honor yourself, kind of thing. But, you know, when a Virgo has got a lot of different, you know, a Virgo doesn't live the same, you know, and that's kind of to broaden it even more.
Right.
So a projector, just because someone's a projector, they could be completely different to you. They may just need more rest, just like you do. It's just like a, it's just like, it's the energy type. There's a type of way you hold energy. I don't have a motor. So when I'm saying to people, hey, you know, I come across as extremely energetic and vibrant and potent and powerful, but when I'm not on, I'm literally the opposite. I'm so quiet. I don't even talk. I'm in the bath. I'm all about pleasure. I'm walking with my sisters. I'm in nature. There's this completely different energy to me. And that's actually like, you know, I'm hoping soon it will be 70% of my reality. But I've had to decondition slowly because I was told I had to work my butt off, but I don't. And the more I come into the zone of that, how I'm supposed to be in that energy type, the more blessings I get. As crazy. And that's the experiment. So just because you're a projector, just because you've got the same authority, just because they're your sibling, doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to be the same as them. Because my other sister has nothing the same as me, but she is a 3-5, so her personality profile is the same as mine. Again, the same thing. We show up to the world very similar, but she goes. She's an energizer bunny. She's a manager, and she doesn't have to stop, where I do. So she does probably 3/4 more of energy stuff than I do. I can't keep up with her. And the minute one of my sisters and I, the projector and I, stopped trying to keep up with the managing, and we realized that the way she functions is completely, she's not meant to make decisions like now, where my other sister and I, we make decisions right now. Want to go for a walk? Absolutely. My other sister goes, can I think about it? And we're like, why? And then we realize she's an emotional authority. So this is where you can, I know that's kind of going into the intricacies, but I'm just trying to like make the point that we're all completely different. And when we respect that, there's a particular reason why your friend is, I don't know, can't make that decision. There's a reason why they're not like you. And there's
right. And
they can't keep up. They're not a nana. And if they're overly emotional, I've got a friend and she cries all the time, and I'm totally happy with that, but I'm not going to cry with her because I'm not emotional. I don't want to cry, but it's okay for her to cry. So when we stop judging and we start realizing.
Yeah. And again, you bring up a really good point, because really what human design is it's the way that we process energy in the universe. So it's kind of the way, if we imagine ourselves like as a fish in the sea, it's kind of the way we navigate the water, right? You know, the bigger fish with the stronger fins, or, you know, it's just how they are going to, their body in particular is going to interact with the molecules of water, right? It's kind of like that. Human design is very simply, this is how your body and your mind and your personality, your energy, all of it is meant to move through the 3-dimensional world in a way that works beautifully. And that's why it's a blueprint for life for people, because it works. You can make decisions based on that. And in my opinion, decision making is one of the most difficult skills to have. and to learn, but it's also, it can be terrifying. Depending on your history and your wounding, decision-making might be just paralyzing for you. And this is the beauty of human design, is it takes the difficulty out of decision-making. Traditionally, we use the thinking, everything is mental, and human design says, no, that is not how we do it, right? There's a whole different thing happening up there, and there's a reason for that beautiful creativity, but that's not what it's for. So again, life becomes so much easier to navigate just simply using your strategy and authority. This is how I move through the water.
And when you understand yourself, you understand the other so much. So I used to literally be like, why doesn't my sister make a decision? Why does she have to wait? Because for me, right, I don't get that, because someone asked me if I want to do something and I'm a yes or a no person. I know straight away. Right. I wasn't always that way because I was functioning from my conditioning, but now I do acknowledge how I work. Now, one of the things, you know, when we're talking about the centers, you were talking about the G center, and I had this conversation recently. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I just think it's fascinating, because as we know with the solar plexus, it's kind of whether you're emotional or not, depending if it's open or whether it's defined. And we do talk a lot about that in human design, whether you're an emotional wave or whether you are more of an empath. But yeah, the G center is definitely fascinating.
It is. And so the G center really sheds new light on this whole idea of law of attraction, if you will. And I've struggled with the whole law of attraction thing because I'm not comfortable with a lot of the way it's presented. I think that it's far too simplistic, and people end up really disappointed or blowing all kinds of money or something like that, thinking, I'm just going to manifest it. And it's not correct for everyone to do that. But there's also some really important information to understand about our energy, right? All of us in this respect. So, you know, we started out as the 7-centered chakra person or human being. And in the 1783, I think it was, I could be wrong, maybe 87, we turned into the 9-centered human design being. And it's where the let's see, we get to the, what is that? Not the solar, the heart center on the chakra system, and it splits into two. The heart center splits into the what we call the G center, which is a diamond in the middle, a diamond shape, and what we call the will center, which is a tiny triangle to the right. So it becomes 2 centers. And then there's a little more splitting that goes on in the chart, but we'll stick with that. Those 2 centers come from what we call what was the heart center. And that's an important point. We refer a lot of times to this little will center as the heart center. And sometimes we refer to the G center as the heart center. And that's why. And the G center is very interesting. It is what we call the magnetic monopole. And I think it was in 2018, 2016, maybe 2015. Scientists discovered that there is something called a magnetic monopole. What does that even mean? This just sounds like more craziness, right? A magnet has 2 poles, a negative and a positive. There was always there's been a theory for a long time that a magnetic monopole existed, right? We see the magnetic resonance of the Earth when you look at pictures of it. And it's got these kind of cool lines or matrices coming out from it. And that's because it has this kind of resonance coming off the Earth. And human beings have the same kind of resonance. And they actually use this whole principle in MRIs. So this is for real. And the G center is what we've discovered is, or what they call the magnetic monopole. What does that mean then? It's got 1 pole, and its only function is to attract. It's like the 1/2 of the magnet, only the attraction piece. So it's very interesting. And notice it's what we call the heart center. That tells us a lot. And when you start to look at a chart, it's got all these weird, like it's got all these little numbers around everything. It gets a little crazy, right? And if you look at that diamond center, it's got numbers that go all the way around it. And so without getting too into that, those are called gates. And we'll just simply say that each one of those gates hold a specific archetypal energy that we process that G center with, okay? Now, remembering that the G center is the magnet, it is the magnetic monopole in the body. It is the seat of the soul, we call it in human design, and it is attracting. So when we think and we're told and we hear, you've got to change your thinking, you've got to change how you're feeling in order to attract things, that's actually, I don't want to say it's completely incorrect, but man, is it missing the mark. Those things fluctuate big time, right? We can't always control how we're feeling, nor should we. That would make us, we wouldn't be human. But with this G center, when we learn how to, in human design, calibrate it, now we are attracting based on calibrating those gates and the meanings of those gates. And what we know is that when they do, I don't know, some kind of a test where they test the magnetic resonance and the neurotransmitters, more information actually goes from the heart to the brain than vice versa, right? But we've been making decisions, doing everything with our brain, and yet our heart is putting out way more information. And when we calibrate this, it calibrates the thinking. And the thinking then calibrates, we go down to what we call the emotional solar plexus, the feelings. We're never going to be high vibe all the time. That's not realistic. But we can calibrate on a daily basis that G center. And so I can go through those gates super, super quick if you want. I don't know if we have time or not, but
yeah, if you'd like to, because I've got one gate in my G center.
So when we think of this like the heart center, we want to open the heart. This is one of the ways that we decondition. This is one of the ways that we, and normally deconditioning takes 7 years in human design. This is one of the ways that we draw to us or magnetize to us, however you want to look at that, what we want, what's good for us, right? What's meant to be for us, etc. So,
Siobhan, before you go into that, can I just ask you a question? So, as an energy worker, I work with quite a few clients in groups, and I can feel whether people are blocking themselves in their heart, and a lot of people get chest pain and back pain through there. So, do you believe, like you say, there's this pole, and it's like the magnet to bring in things, right? Do you also see that people block this, or is that more of a resistance?
It's both. It's part of the conditioning, but what happens is, and this is why we have the opportunity to recalibrate it, right? They absolutely block it. And the key to this whole thing is this G center is about self-love. And until we're able to love ourselves, we will attract the quality of the level of self-love that we have. Everything that we attract is going to be the quality of that level of self-love. Now that hit me right between the eyes, partly because of the work that I've done, partly because I've been in recovery for decades, and all the wounding I've seen and I've experienced. I'm like, holy cow. So when people are just trying to change their thinking and trying to keep themselves high vibe, and it's not working, or it's like, this insanity that they go through, that's why. Because you're missing the whole point. And how do we have this self-love? Human design gives us a roadmap to that, okay? So we can actually recalibrate on a daily basis. So for example, the gate 10 is about self-love, okay? The gate 7 is about empowerment. It's about choosing things that empower me in life, right? The gate 1 is about fulfillment through my potential kind of thing. All these things open the heart. The gate 13 is about listening to and holding stories that serve your heart, or forgiveness. And that was a huge one, because when people hear forgiveness, they often, completely resist that, which is understandable, considering a lot of us have been through some pretty seriously bad situations in our lives. Please don't bring up forgiveness. How dare you, kind of thing. And what I say to people is, this is about you recalibrating your G center. So I'm not asking you to forgive every narcissist that ever wrecked your life in the past, kind of thing, right? Don't go there. But instead, on a daily basis, first forgive yourself for falling prey to anything like that, right? For the day, work on letting go and forgiving them, not for a lifetime, because I don't think that's realistic, and I don't always think that's safe. But for the day, to help kind of recalibrate, if you can, right?
Beautiful.
But it's wounding to look at.
And that's my one. So I've got that 13, and I'm actually, and it's in the black line. So black is conscious. And it's kind of interesting, because when I first started this journey, it was the deep forgiveness of myself, the self-pity, the self-hatred for not being good enough. I had to really do the deep forgiving of myself. And then I got angry and had to start forgiving other people and all the things. So that really did set me free. So I love that.
Yes. And these things, until we deal with these things, it's actually, we're calibrating our self-love and our magnetic monopole based on these. So now you can understand, oh my gosh, no wonder I keep pulling these wacko relationships into my life and these situations, right? The gate 25 is about awareness of spirit as source, right? In other words, what is your relationship with the unseen, the spirit world, the soul, whatever you want to call it? By deepening that relationship and learning how to trust it, this again is all about self-love. All of these things recalibrate this heart center, right? So this is, again, it's going to affect the quality of the thoughts and the quality of the thinking, right? The where are we? The gate 46, being embodied in the physicality of your body, your essence, loving your body, which is a biggie especially for women, I think. But loving your body, but not just that, expressing the love of your body through movement. Maybe it's dance, maybe it's running, maybe it's taking a bath, right? Whatever it is for you, really diving into and loving the connection to your body. And honestly, that connection actually increases your connection to spirit, right? When we really learn to be part of that, and love and enjoy the movement and everything about it. The gate 2 is being receptive, and this is really important, allowing, receiving, being able to receive. So it's not even telling us you need to, be giving support to other people. I think it's the gate of support, be giving support to other people, but allowing support for you. Remember, this is about self-love, right? How many people fight that, right? I'm just going to be 100%.
I think there's a pandemic in itself.
Yeah, exactly. So that was gate 2. And then gate 15, being aware of sharing and the energy of compassion. So, but we can only, just like you talked about earlier, we can only have that compassion if we have it for ourselves. We can only share if we're taking care of ourselves and we have enough energy and enough wherewithal and enough stuff to share, whatever it is. So it all comes back to calibrating or recalibrating on a daily basis. That's the way I look at it. On a daily basis, that G center.
I love
that.
It kind of explains where, like, I keep getting this honor. It's this week, it's very much honor. Like, you need to honor your body. I get up early and I move my body and I run and I forgive myself for anything that I feel like if any shadows are coming up, and I nurture my body and I go, what is required today? It's not a once a year New Year's Eve thing, guys. It's a daily thing. So I love that you brought this up. I think this is going to be a game changer for so many people to recalibrate. So whether you've got a defined G center or a non-defined G center, you will have these gates. Now, also one thing that you've taught me is whether they are defined or not, you still have all of these energies. Is that correct?
Absolutely do. Absolutely do. So a lot of times people will make the mistake of seeing their chart and saying, oh, I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a head center. I don't have an identity center. We all have all of the chart. The difference is you process the energy differently. So that the people with the colored in centers have a very fixed way of processing that energy. Don't worry too much about that. You can start to get confused going, what is she talking about? Just take that, put it on the back shelf, take my word for it. People with the open centers or the white centers, they process it very differently. They do something that's very interesting. They take in the energy of those around them in those open centers, those white centers, and they amplify it.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the implications if you have an emotional solar plexus that's open and you become a sponge for everybody else's emotional stuff because you don't understand this and you're always on overwhelm and you don't know to be a screen, right?
Yeah, it's too much. And I had to learn that as a medium as well. Like before, I said to you just before this call, I was doing a reading, spirit came through and I was crying. It's not my emotions, it was the spirit's emotions, to be honest, as I was connecting to this person in this recording. Totally crazy. But also my husband and my daughter have got defined solar plexus, and my son and I have an open one. And my son and I are probably the loudest, most vibrant, the most intense. If anyone's going to scream and hoot and howl, it's me and my son. But the interesting thing is when it's just me and my son, we are so cool, calm and collected. But when the little, we call it the bonds and the miniers, so when the Luke and my daughter are around, they're so chilled, but we amplify their emotions. This
exactly what happened.
It's so tricky because someone goes, I'm so calm, and then my husband comes home and it's like, go check his solar plexus.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So, just these little tweaks and understanding who you are and like, oh, I just thought I was really, really messed up and too sensitive. No, this is who you're meant to be. You just have to understand that your conditioned open center shames you for that, number one. So you try to fight it, you try to not be that, it actually locks you into it even more, right? You just have no idea how to process that energy because who knew this? Nobody ever taught us.
You didn't even know. And I used to feel guilty for not wanting to hang out with people, and the reason why I don't want to hang out with them is because they say I might be a managing who is full of energy, lots of centers that are colored, they've got a defined ego, they've got like get up and go, and they're emotional. And for me, like after an hour, I'm just like, I think, and maybe they're having a hard time and they're on a wave, like we call it. I'm literally going to like pass out or freak out or go onto a 3-day bender of stress because I think, what the fuck is wrong with me? But it was never my energy. It was amplified for whatever they're going through. And when I realized that, then I realized I'm not a psycho. My husband's just having an emotional wave. And I've made it all about me because I'm an empath, and it's a game changer.
Exactly. It is a game changer because then you can understand, I can break that aura and take breaks. And that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with me. It's actually healthy. And B, I am meant to be extremely wise about emotions and other people's emotions, right? I'm not meant to just be a sponge and be victimized by other people's emotions, which is probably how you've been feeling prior to learning this. Is a lot of times, who wouldn't, right? Like I just feel kind of victim to other people's insane emotional stuff, and it becomes mine. I take it on.
Yeah, and understanding that people have waves, like my best friend, I'll notice her wave, or my daughter or my husband, and I'll be like, or a client. Of course, this helps with your business immensely because a client will be hurting and howling and crying and freaking out. And you're like, what patterns playing out here? What wave are they on? How can I support them? And rather than going, why does this person keep getting like doing the same thing. Because for me, I may not get it, not that I obviously go into my coaching mode, but rather than actually going, why is this person overly emotional over nothing, you can actually go, oh, okay, sweetheart, so has anything happened, or how are you feeling? Or now it's time for you to not go into overdrive. It's time for you to come inward and honor yourself. And then knowing that, rather than pushing them, push through. A lot of coaches do that. It's like, no, don't push through. You need to calm down and don't make any decisions right now until you calm down.
Right. Or until they ride out that wave and see what's consistent. I have the emotional wave. I happen to have the channel in that emotional wave that is probably the easiest one to have, which I am grateful for. When I say easy, it's very, very creative energy, right? But because society has big time for so long shamed us for any kind of emotional stuff, people who have the emotional wave are taught that they're crazy, right? Are taught that they're too sensitive, for that reason, et cetera. And so what happens is they have their emotional wave and they start to kind of go down into this kind of almost melancholy creative mode, but they don't know that's what it is. And because of all that shaming and all the messages and all the filters that they have from the past, it gets worse, right? So they actually decrease their frequency. We look at it like a sine wave. If you actually look up SIN, a sine wave, SINE, a sine wave, you'll see how sine waves work. It's, the frequency of a wave, and it's the same thing. So when they're thinking, they're out of calibration, their thinking gets more and more negative because of all the shaming, right? They're not forgiving themselves and they're not, blah, blah, blah. Now that wave decreases in frequency, so it goes down, 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 and it stays. The frequency slows down and they stay stuck there longer. So you can actually modulate that and use that more for creativity and going, ooh, today's a day I should go to the spa and write, you know what I mean? Because I'm just feeling like, ugh, kind of thing. And this is my wave. And then magical things can happen, right? But who learned this in society? I've never heard anybody in society say, oh, you're having, this emotional thing that's happening. It happens for you like, every 3 weeks or something, go get some medication, right? Instead of honor, and I love that you use that word. It's one of my favorite words. Honor who the heck you are, right? It is a game changer. All of these things are game changers for people.
Yeah, it's a game changer. I know my daughter has got all of the waves, and she'll come in at 9:30 at night. She doesn't have a set bedtime. I try, but there's no point. But she comes in and she's like, I'm just so sad. And I'm like, it's okay, sweetheart. And then my husband and I are aware that she's on a wave and we don't make her wrong for it. And
right.
It's like if my son is playing up and he's being like hooting and howling all over the place, we call it, and he's louder than life, I go, stop, everyone. We need to look at our energies. What am I doing? What is my daughter doing? What is my husband doing? Because my kid is amplifying somebody else's energy because it's not his. And, he came out screaming, amplifying probably mine. So it's kind of interesting I know that if my husband's feeling emotional or if he's feeling a certain way, to just really kind of to nurture that and say to him, hey, you're not depressed, like, not that I say that to him, but I used to think that, we had a lot of depression because him and I used to bounce off each other because I was amplifying the way he was feeling. But he's a sensitive person who's highly intuitive, brought up in a New Zealand man's world. And that's what we're happening now, is we get to bring up our sons and our daughters with understanding of themselves on a deeper basis. I think it's just so beautiful.
It really is. It's very, very beautiful. And it's time. It's time. Society is in desperate, the world is in desperate need for something like this to hang on to. This is not a religion. It doesn't matter if you're religious. It doesn't matter if you're metaphysical. It does not matter. This is more like, it's kind of like a personality assessment, but it's far deeper than that. You know what I mean? It's far,
It's
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
We're not going to lie. I've done life coaching. I know all these different codes of everything, and I'm telling you now, for me personally, HD alongside with you can just use different coaching models to help different types of personalities. They're going to fit different energy types,
Yeah.
but as a whole, the deeper understanding of this is it's just so accurate. Where I've never come up with anything else that I've completely resonated with. There was something missing, and I think HD for me was that key because I can dive deeper into it. So, Siobhan, go for it.
Can I throw one thing really quick on there, because I just always want to be very careful, having worked in mental health. We are not saying that if you feel depressed, especially if you feel suicidal, please get help. We are not saying that human design is a cure. What I am saying is, if you've struggled with things like this, human design can be so helpful to giving you tremendous insight. And some people find that that's really what's been going on. But mental illness is a thing. And so I would never, ever want somebody to watch this and stop taking their medication or something like that. But I would encourage you to explore human design, right? Keep taking care of yourself, keep doing the things, but just see if maybe this is affecting what's happening.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I think it's really important. I do get a lot of people who come to me and think that as a coach, as a spiritual coach, obviously and business coach, HD coach, as we bring that all in as a holistic approach, they think that I can cure them. And the truth is, sometimes, quite often, I'll say, look, you actually require a trauma coach, or you require a counselor or psychologist, or, don't get off those meds because I'm not a professional, health professional. So I think that's really important to say that, because there's mental illness close by, and I'm sure everybody has the same in their reality as well, knowing somebody who does require that extra support. But of course, if we start somewhere, like you said, you start at that tip and then you integrate and you shift, then you can have more ease with your reality. And I know for someone, myself, it was live or die. And that's how I felt. Now, was I going to actually end my life? Absolutely not. But I was going to switch off. And I was going to fit in. And I was like, I don't know how the fuck I'm going to do this, but I choose consciousness, and I choose me, or I just choose to play the role of this mum and wife. And I knew that was a spiritual death for me. So I chose the kingdom of me, so then I could now be in the kingdom of we, and it worked. So
we are so happy you did, because you're amazing.
You're amazing, and I'm so grateful for you, because what would have happened if you didn't just send me that little email? Who knows? Thank you for this conversation. You have really done what you truly say you do, which is read in a way that it's not about all of the things. Like if someone goes and gets this G-Center information, and you guys can find your own charts for free on Jovian Archive. You just Google human design. Please, if you want to know more about that, reach out to Siobhan or myself. Siobhan has got the Beginners Human Design Facebook group on Facebook, obviously, and it's like basically a free program. There is I know something's coming up soon as well, exciting for you, but there is literally like so much information in there. But like you said, Siobhan, it's about the integration and doing it at a pace that you're ready. Now, I've done mentoring with you. I have got like 5 different books. I've done 2 different programs. I've had 3 different readings, and I do readings for people who are in my coaching world. But I feel like I've just opened a book that I've just read the first page, and that's the kind of honoring and the respect I give it, because it's not about the doing. It's not about the facts. It's not about consuming the information. You can Google it. It's about the going, am I aligning to being a projector or a generator or a manifestor or whatever? How's this looking, and how's this look for my family? And how can I come back to, like you said, the biggest thing is self-love.
Draw more of that to you. Draw the same quality that you're giving yourself to you, right? How beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It's an incredible thing, an incredible gift we've been given.
Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And everybody who has listened, please go and check out Siobhan. If you want to get a reading from her, then message her. You can find her on Facebook. It's definitely worth it. She gives you, like you say, a lot of bang for your buck, but also in integrity. And what that means is by not showing off the skills of how much she knows, but more of about the integration and how it's going to help you. And I truly believe that your previous coaching really helps, because the space that you hold and how deep you can see within people, next level.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are so welcome, and thank you, and we will catch you guys soon. Thanks, bye.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining the Release Your Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love to hear from you. So please leave a review and tell me what your favorite takeaway from today was. There is so much more from where this came from. You can also find me at Holistic Energy Shifting on Facebook, where you can find more content, more coaching, and more guidance. Have a grand and glorious day, and I'll see you next time.